Do you think when you have huge favorites in these mid majors or lower leagues, right, to win the conference tournaments, like a Liberty, like an Oral Roberts, like a Colgate and the Patriot, does that create some value down the board, in your opinion, on other teams to look at, and rather than lay -$2 or 230, you look at a team at 4-1 or 8-1 or maybe even a little bit beyond that?
I think it really depends on what the tournament is. And I'll use the Patriot League, for example. You mentioned Colgate. That is a conference that does it right, in my opinion,
Hmm.
where it is a neutral site tournament. It's spread out over about a week. So it really is not really a tournament feel. It's just you play games and then you ultimately crown a champion. And Colgate, ran through that conference with relative ease, and they have dominated that conference over the past couple of years. And guess what? All their games are going to be in Hamilton, New York, their home court. And I don't really see a ton of value in someone like Navy or someone further down the board, because I do think Colgate is the superior team in that conference. And, there are some shops, including DraftKings, that allows you to parlay some of these conference futures. And look, I'm not a big parlay subscriber. However, I do think there are circumstances where you can take a Colgate and put them with a Liberty, and you're at like plus 108 at DraftKings. And we had Jim Root from the Three Man Weave on my show last night, and that was a play that he highly recommended. On the other side, where you mentioned, is there value down the board? I do think a conference like the Horizon League is one that usually is a conference that has some upsets in its history.
Hmm.
And this is a conference that will have its quarterfinals tonight on home floors, excuse me. And then they go to Indianapolis for two games in 2 days. So that's where things can get kind of wonky. And, Youngstown State is the favorite in that conference. I don't believe they've ever, as a school, gone to the NCAA tournament. So I think there's a little value of getting a little unique, a little risky, taking a shot or two. So I think it's conference by conference. You look at a conference like the Ohio Valley, where Belmont used to run that conference. Murray State was in that conference. Both those teams are now in the Missouri Valley. So I don't think there's I don't think there's value in the favorite necessarily there. So it's a case by case basis. And I think there are different situations where you can look a little further down the board, and maybe you can get a long shot into the championship game, and you're sitting there with a great hedge opportunity.
Who do you think the best mid-major team is, and that could win a couple games in the tournament?
Yeah, it's a great question, Paulie, and I think there's a couple teams. I mean, it depends on how you define mid-major.
Sure.
I think we're at the point, right, where we don't define Gonzaga or St. Mary's really as mid-majors anymore. I mean, Gonzaga is certainly not, and St. Mary's is a team that, the metrics love them. I'm not as high on St. Mary's, maybe as some, just because of their offensive deficiencies. But if you're talking true mid-majors, teams that we've seen in the past that could make that Sweet 16 run, a team like Florida Atlantic is assuming they can win their conference tournament, is a team that, could be looking in that 10-11 range as a seed there. So that's certainly a team to keep an eye on. The Mountain West, I wouldn't consider a mid-major conference, considering, based off of KenPom, they're actually a better conference numbers-wise than the ACC this year. So in true mid-major fashion, a team that I think it really has an opportunity to make some noise. And remember, they made some noise 2 years ago as a 15 seed, making a run to the Sweet 16, is Oral Roberts. Max Asmus is still on that team, believe it or not, and he's one of the more elite scorers in the country. This is a team that went 18-0 in the Summit League. They've got a challenge ahead of them. They have to go to the Pentagon up in South Dakota and win 3 games in 4 days. But they have won 18 straight games in that conference. They are minus 190 at DraftKings to run the table there. And this is a team that, when I'm looking at mid-majors, guys, and teams that can make a run, I want them to excel at something, whether it be, are they just locked down defensively? Can they get hot offensively? And that's what Oral Roberts can do. 23rd in the country in adjusted offensive efficiency, 7th in the country in effective field goal percentage, 26th in the country in three-point percentage. So I think Oral Roberts is a team that, sitting on a 12 line, let's say they play let's say they play like a St. Mary's or a Virginia in the first round, teams that are more, defensive centric. That could be really tricky matchup. So, Oral Roberts is a team that I'm really high on. And then, Liberty also, a team that could make a run. A couple years ago, they won a game in the NCAA tournament. So those are certainly a couple of the mid-majors that I like. And, lastly, Colgate, a team that last year covered against Wisconsin, didn't win. Another team, they can shoot the ball incredibly well. And as we all know, in these one and done situations, you get a team that gets hot at the right time. And Colgate, guys, is the number one 3-point shooting team in the country at 40.7%. So you put them in a one and done situation, you get hot in the right building, and Colgate could certainly pull an upset, probably in that 14 line there for the Raiders out of the Patriot League.
Yeah. Go ahead, Paul.
No, I was going to say, you mentioned it earlier. What was the response to your tweet, which I really liked, with Oral Roberts? Because you mentioned Colgate gets the title game at home. It's like, we just played for 3 months. For what? For seeding? Because I go undefeated in conference play, and I have to win 3 games on a neutral. I don't get one advantage if I'm Oral Roberts in the Summit League. It's lunacy.
For the most part, Paulie, people agreed, but you did get the handful of people saying, well, if you can't win 3 games in 4 days, you don't deserve to be in the tournament. I'm like, well, what's the point of playing basketball for 3 months? And here's the ironic part, right? Everything's about the almighty dollar. And that's why you see these conferences go to these neutral sites. I would love to see the breakdown between the money that these conferences make for, playing their conference tournament at a neutral site arena, and the money that they make for a team winning multiple games in the NCAA tournament. Because remember, conferences get an extra check per win in the NCAA tournament. So if Oral Roberts makes another magical run, the conference really benefits from that. And I've just never fully understood why conferences like the Summit League or the MEAC or the SWAC or, whatever, don't rig the field for their best teams. Take the West Coast Conference, for instance. That tournament starts tonight here in Las Vegas at the Orleans Arena. It is incredibly rigged for the top 2 teams in Gonzaga, St. Mary's, as it should be, because those teams proved over a stretch of 2.5 months they're the best teams in the conference. So, hey, if you want to make a run as Pacific, good luck. You have to win 4 games in 5 days, and Gonzaga and St. Mary's are going to be, incredibly well rested. But yeah, the one that just is mind-boggling this year is the Summit League. Oral Roberts, located in Tulsa, Oklahoma, has to go up to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where there's multiple teams from the Dakotas in that conference. Yeah. And you went 18-0. Yep. And the next best team, guys, was 13-5. And the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 seed all have the same path. 3 games, 4 days, and it's not even reseeded. Like, that is just mind-boggling that you think that is a fair way to go about your tournament.
You know what it is? It's the new pitch clock in Major League Baseball. Right? Because people don't like change. And if the pitch clock had been in baseball since the 1800s, people would have no idea what it's like not to have it. And if we never had tournaments in college basketball, people would have no idea about this theory that you have to win 3 games in 3 days. That's how silly it is.
Well, and it's I love tournaments, and for these conferences to be on ESPN, ESPN2, whatever it may be, it's awesome. It's great to highlight these conferences. But I've always said, I really don't like watching these conferences in barren arenas. Put them on a home floor. Sure. Like when we watch the Patriot League Championship at Colgate or wherever it may be, it's always a great environment. The NEC. Guys, there's only 4 conferences right now in college basketball that have their champion crowned on a home floor. 4. That's it.
Yeah, that's not a big enough number. And I need to clarify. I do love the tournaments as well, but the meaning behind them is just, it's too significant. And you need to reward the regular season winners in these smaller leagues like we've talked about for the last 5 minutes.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.